Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This is Dan coming to you today from the studios at DTM Enterprises, my little wood shop in the backyard, also known as DTM Woodwork. I have another special guest every time, man. I've been able to have this bunch of people coming through here. Every one of them tickles me in a different way. I've known Justin my entire time on this go around. There was a 4-year period where I stumbled, and then I hit what is my current home group and my current sobriety date, and met a bunch of guys I'm hanging around with now. Justin is one of those. I remember seeing him. Matter of fact, I'm almost positive you were in that very first meeting in Brian's basement that I was at. So just welcome to the podcast here, Justin. How you doing today,
Thanks
man?
for having me, man. Doing great.
Cool.
Awake, wide open.
All right.
Ready to go, man.
Good deal. Well, we'll get these couple commercials out of the way. Darren Frank's music's wrapped around this podcast. If you hang around to the end, you'll hear the entire song, the intro. This is the beginning of the song, and you're interested in that, let me know. We can hook you up with that. spiritualunderground.org. There's a contact page there. You can ask about that music and other things like that. If I can help you with any kind of recovery questions or anything, I'm not sure that I can, but I'm certainly willing to try. There's show notes there and pictures of the people who are on the podcast, so I like to put the face with the voices. I think that's always helped me. I have no idea why. I guess it's a visual thing same reason why I drive using landmarks. And go to Amazon to get Christopher Cohn's book, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. James Christopher Cohn is what it's there. I think if you used any of that, you would get to it. It's now available on it's a hard copy or Kindle version. Last night, we're having meetings here in Louisville. Last night, a buddy of ours, Shane, you've heard his story here, had a meeting here at the local recovery club. His first meeting of this type, and so the movement is growing. It was a meditation meeting, a really good turnout last night, and Justin was actually there with about, I don't know, he counted, but I'm going to throw a guess out of somewhere 40 people at that meeting, which was really cool. And so, once more, James Christopher Cohn, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery at Amazon. We will start out the story just like it's getting to be buggy. No big deal. The bugs can live in here too. We'll start out this story the same way we start out everybody's, man. What's your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is October 10th, 2011.
Cool.
So a little over 7.5 years, right?
7.5 years. October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I don't have any real rules about how we start. I always like to tell a story. Shane started with the day he came into. It dawned on him that he needed this.
Oh yeah.
Some people, most time we start at the beginning. So.
Yeah, man. I started out. I was born in like a middle class family. Mom and dad still together to this day. I was born February 12, 1989. So I'm 30 years old right now.
Oh.
So now I get to hear all the Tim McGraw, My Next 30 Years song every time that comes on, which doesn't happen very often. But yeah, when I was, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, still here in Louisville, Kentucky. I had sort of like I would say a generally normal childhood. I wasn't, I grew up, one of my first memories is climbing up the steps in the old apartment that my parents were at when I was like maybe 2 years old. That's my earliest single memory. And then we moved out of there and we moved in the house they're still in today in Shapley. And growing up, I remember being sort of like the skinny kid growing up, and then slowly throughout my childhood it got bigger and bigger. I was the big kid. And going through school, I went to a Catholic grade school, but I was raised Southern Baptist. My father wanted to send me to a Catholic grade school because he wanted the education. And I always hated it because we had to get up an hour earlier than all the public schools. I had to get it. And so that kind of sucked. And then, so my story very much when I was young, and sort of what a lot of 4-step inventory has been worked on in this thing we call recovery is I grew up, I was verbally bullied quite a bit actually, about my weight and stuff, and some of it was my own doing, and I was an annoying kid, that annoying kid as a child. And much of that it was actually so bad, like verbally and stuff, that teachers, like in 5th grade, teachers like were showing like bullying, like videos in class, education. Yeah.
Bullying wasn't a thing when I was in school yet.
Oh, really?
I mean, we obviously got bullied, but nobody was aware and taking action the way they have of late. And
so it was never physical abuse. I was bigger than most other kids, but it was sort of just like, yeah, that kind of thing was really eating at me as a child. And then throughout my childhood, I was raised as in the church with my father going on Sunday mornings. And I was real involved in the youth group growing up and stuff. I enjoyed my time there. And it was one later on, about 7th grade is when a lot of the other kids started growing up too, and so the bullying and kind of stuff kind of stopped, and a lot of those guys I would consider friends today.
Yeah.
But it left that mark regardless. So I was like the kid who could, in Catholic grade schools, they have religion class along with English and social studies and all that kind of those classes. And I was always a kid who knew where in the Bible everything was. And so people would go to me, and I'd be like, I'm a Baptist, you're a Catholic, I know more about the Bible than you, that kind of thing. That caught me. And so so later years in grade school was a lot better. I joined a football team. I was still kind of a big kid though. I always held that resentment of like I was one of the last people. Like every year, twice a year, we'd run a mile, and the school would keep track of how fast you ran. I was always in the last like 3.
Oh yeah.
That was something that was there that always got at me.
Yeah, those the competitive thing has kind of got us upside, man. But for the folks that end up in the tail end of the slot, it's not. It's really demeaning to be picked last on the kickball team, and all that like that. I'm sure it was a fun race and it was meant to be a fun activity, but daggone, when you're trailing up in the back end of things, it becomes not so fun probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So in my home life, my mother, father were loving parents. My father, I think, maybe struck me and physically struck me maybe once the entire time, but there was always like this foreboding fear. Like I always go back to the movie A Christmas Story. After Ralphie had done something really bad in the movie, and then like he says, "I hear my father's car pulling the driveway, and a wave of terror rolled over me."
Yeah.
that sort of feeling was there though, even though he never really physically struck me or abused me in any negative way like that. But it was sort of, he made his presence known. Mm-hmm. It was about hard work and getting out there and mowing the grass with him and bettering my life and going to the church and stuff. And so really about through that, 1996, my little brother was born. So he was there, and growing up with him was another thing going on, and we'll talk about later in Night Step stuff. There's a lot of things there that I owed immense to my brother for growing up. It wasn't exactly fair to him. He had nothing to do with anything. And me being the older brother, and I think working through 4-step inventories and work, a lot of it was just, me wanting to feel power, because I lacked that power early on when I was being bullied myself. So basically I got into high school, still going into church. High school was pretty cool because most people didn't know who I was. I ended up going to public school.
Oh, did you?
A handful of people from the church, the school I went to, and went through school in high school, had some pretty cool friends, played football there. Graduated.
What year did you move to a public school?
It was I graduated high school in 2007.
More like when you were a sophomore, or when you started high school? Is that
when I moved to?
When you went to you switched from a private school to a public school.
I finished 8th grade.
Okay, so you finished high school. You went to high school in the public schools. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty typical. I see that that we get started in. A lot of people. My kids went to a private school for a while, and some things happened and transitioned to public school.
Yeah. A lot of. My mom went to the same school, high school, so she wanted me to go there. And I was old enough. My dad was like, "All right, you got your education from Catholic grade school." Yeah. I'm like, "All right, thanks, Dad."
You've been fully indoctrinated.
Absolutely. So I had an interesting position on, and I'm sure we'll talk plenty about religion and stuff. I had the Protestant and the Catholic sort of view of religion a lot of time when I was growing up, and so I had some good times in youth group at church, going through all the high school, a lot of good friends, got a lot of good teachers, and then I remember going in my science class learning about evolution, and I remember like learning about what it was and how it works and the scientific evidence for it. And then I remember this, like the day where my faith, I guess you could say, was wandering, was when I was talking to my youth pastor, and we're talking about like random science stuff or whatever. And I'm talking about learning about evolution in school. And he's like, I believe the Earth to be 6,000 to 10,000 years old. And so I remember that day. I remember that was when I commenced to doubt certain things about, oh my God, like I've been taught this my whole life. Like, what's going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you mean 6,000 to 10,000 years old? And he's just like, and then he throws all these weird like claims and things about how there's human footprints and dinosaur footprints in the same rock layer and stuff, and which isn't really true at all. But things like that he would justify, and it's just that sort of commenced to get me on the path of sort of leaving religion. And at the same time, so my senior year of high school, I did the co-op thing where I still worked for UPS so I go to 2 classes in the morning at high school, and senior year, then I go work for UPS.
Oh yeah.
And so I did that for 5 years. But during that time, leading up to that, were my first experience with a mind-altering substance. Like when I was 16, with actually a lot of the youth group people, of all people, we met with a friend of mine's friend had like a shack out in Nelson County, and we were all going to go out there and have a party out there. And that was my moment to be a part of. I had this feeling of being this togetherness, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so we go out there, and I drink beer for the first time, Bud Light, and I remember not getting really all that drunk, fairly tipsy enough to I could feel it, and then going about my way the next morning, whatever. And then a month later, we go back to the same place. This time I was like, all right, I got tipsy last time, I'm getting drunk this time. And so I got trash drunk, just so trash, I'm walking and pissing at the same time and all this kind of shit. But still, I left there, and I didn't really, like, it wasn't really, like, I liked the camaraderie and stuff, but, like, I liked the effect, but it wasn't, like, something that I really was wanted to be invested in drinking, like that feeling. And I know it's not because my drug of choice, which was opiates, came in my life soon after, like when I was 17. And I remember I had like a headache or something like that, or some kind of pain, like legitimate pain. My mom had Vicodin in the cabinet, and I was talking to my mom about, I have whatever pain it was, and she's like, just take a Vicodin, man, that's fine. And in my mind, and in our family's mind, like, I just thought Vicodin was like a souped up aspirin.
Right.
Like we had no idea of the properties of oxycodone or hydrocodone, none of that kind of stuff. So I just innocently took it. And so I'm sitting there. I remember this day. I'm sitting there in my room on my bed, and I'm playing a video game, Metal Gear Solid 3. It's like a spy game, and I'm running through the jungle in camo and stuff. And if you could imagine, you just sit next to me on that bed, and my character's moving around through the jungle, and all of a sudden my character just stops. And then my character stops, not moving, because I experienced what I like to call that wave of awesomeness, that dopamine hit, that feeling, that amazing feeling that I would attribute, to drugs for so long. And from there, that moment, so much more intense feeling than alcohol ever was before that. And from then on, it was in my mind, like, this feels fucking good.
Yeah.
And
I remember that too, man. Mine's more in the rearview mirror looking back at it. I didn't really, now I know what that feeling was. At the time, I didn't know what that really was. I didn't process it. Did you actually process this feels good? At the moment? I mean, I knew I felt good, but I really didn't put it together with I don't know that I really put that 2 + 2 = 4 thing together.
I'd say yeah.
Did you?
I remember I laid back on the bed, and I was like, holy crap, this feels really good. Yeah.
Did you say, well, how old about?
16, 17, and
yeah,
right in there. Yeah. It was just before I started working at UPS. Yeah. So
I had broke my leg and when I was 19 years old, and I compound fractured of my whatever the front bone is. I don't remember if it's a tibia or fibia. And I was in the hospital for quite a while. And my dad was bringing me car models to glue together, for something to do while I was sitting in the hospital, and I was getting those pain pills. And I remember being able to like just sit there and just really focus on those model building stuff, man, and stay up really, really late. I'd stay up and I'd ask for more pain medication rather than go to sleep. But I didn't consciously see what I was doing then. I look back and I know it right now. I see that was what that was. But at the time, I really was oblivious to it all. I mean, I knew that I was asking for the medication, and I knew that's what was making me. I guess I had to know that's what was making me feel good. But I sure didn't like put it together at any level. Like I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it. I was oblivious to the actual what was happening to me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely that feeling. So yeah, oblivious to the alcohol for me,
That euphoric recall on that opiate head rush is still like I have absolutely nothing to do with drinking today. I just have nothing. There's no lure to it at all. But that euphoric recall still lingers. It still sits there and goes, that still would feel good, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. Little known to people still out there who are so sick that wave of awesomeness can happen in recovery.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Right.
And it lasts a lot longer and can continue to last.
Yeah, and it doesn't have any negative consequences.
Exactly. I don't have to sell my whole, steal everything from my parents,
right,
to afford it.
I sidetracked you a little bit off of that. That's you brought back a memory to me on that.
Yeah, I love it. So I started working at UPS, and then I got. So I had that feeling of like I knew what that feeling was of pain pills, and I met somebody at UPS who I heard them talking while I'm working. I loaded feeders or semi trucks. I loaded those. And he's talking to some guy. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And he goes, drugs. I'm like, oh, like what? He goes, OCs. I'm like, OCs, Oxycontin. He's like, oh, is that like a pain pill? He goes, yeah, it's just like a stronger, like hydrocodone. I was like, oh, I know about hydrocodone, obviously, And so that was almost it for me. Like I went over, I started talking to him or whatever, and he's like, yeah, I just sell Oxycontin. And I went over to this dude's place, and I bought some Oxycontin. And what's interesting is he's there and there's a few other people there, and they're like snorting these pills. They're crushing up, snorting, and I'm like, crush up, snort. Like he's like, yeah, nobody swallows them. It's just you don't really get a hit from it. It was like, and I just remember thinking, okay, like I guess I'll give it a try. Just. So he had a pill cutter. He'd cut up this pill like in quarters and shit from when I first started, and that first time just told me how to do it, snorted up my nose, and oblivion, like just feeling good, and so that began my career on drugs, and it's wonderful. It started out like a week, and it kept getting to the point to where it was like not wonderful, like it's good, wonderful. Like at the time, I felt wonderful because it was like on the weekend.
Fact of the matter is, the stuff worked really good for a while.
I did, yeah. It makes you feel good for this short time. There's some fun times, but yeah.
And it collapsed on you. So you're saying you're doing it once a week, and then
eventually progressed to doing it almost every day.
Yeah.
I had moments throughout my, I eventually, lost that job. Just couldn't stay. Union stewards couldn't do anything to keep me working there.
Really?
Just from just missing stuff, missing work, and all that kind of shit, and not showing up. And God, it was terrible. So it got to the point where sort of I wasn't working there anymore, and I sort of had a few jobs and stuff in between there and my sobriety date. But the main thing was like throughout this time, I was in this time of from me snorting that pill for the first time and being sober. Like I had some addictions to cocaine. I had some addictions to methamphetamine, ecstasy, Special K. I did a couple times.
Did you?
God Almighty! Like there was a moment in time where, and it reminds me of a guy who made a joke he was speaking at a meeting, but it's like, if you ever want to quit pills, just snort cocaine. That'll get you to quit pills, And so there was a point in time where I was doing cocaine for about 6 months where I thought, well, hell, I may never do opiates again. Like, this is okay.
I got a reasonable substitute.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm no longer doing those, but I'll do this. That is really a big chunk of the insanity of what addiction is that when we switch, we think we actually did something.
Yeah.
We're like pat ourselves on the back that we. I don't do pain pills anymore. I just snort coke.
Yeah. And so what got me off coke was my drug dealer got arrested. And went to jail. So, and then I went back to pills and stuff from people I'd met through all the various people you meet when you're out there in the madness.
Yeah.
And so it really was like a mixture of mostly opiates, but some methamphetamine sprinkled in with a certain friend of mine. And so throughout this time, losing job and stuff is getting progressively worse. I'm living with my parents and stuff out of the house starts disappearing. And my father's power tools, my mother's jewelry, all this kind of stuff. And so the rationale in my mind at the time was like, all right, so I'm going to steal this saw from my father. I'm going to go to the pawn shop. I'm going to pawn it. And then next week I'm going to get me a job. I'm going to get my first paycheck. I'm going to get it back out and give it back to him before he realizes it's gone.
It's missing.
God almighty, that's this crazy thing.
Yeah.
And it's constantly just, I remember about 2 years into it, after snorting my first drug, like my parents wanted me to go to college and stuff. They thought I was on the track going to college, and I gave them this letter, like, I admitted to them that I've been using drugs and like I would never do it again. And they're sitting around, they're like, they start crying a little bit, and they're like, we just hope you never do it again, son. And like, I obviously didn't quit. And so from then on, they were really, their ears were always perked up to what was going on with me and watching where I was going, and just trying to do whatever they could to keep me from leaving the house, for God's sakes. Like, so it got in 2009, it got to a point where they're like, we need to get you some help. And so I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, I'd stole a bunch of stuff or whatever, and I was like, all right, fine. And it really was just, I'll do this because I want to live here. I don't want to leave, And so they took me out to Wellstone, out here in Clarksville. I don't know if it's still Wellstone or not.
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
And so at that time when they took me out, I hadn't been taking as much as I'd been taking. I don't know. It's an average amount, I guess, compared to a whole lot. And they assessed me like, how much do I take? And I'm like, all right, well, we don't really feel like you're suitable for inpatient treatment right now, but we're going to send you over to the Brook in Louisville. I'm like, okay, this is like October-ish, 2009. And then I was introduced to recovery for the first time in 2009. And I went to the Brook, and there was this guy that worked there who was my counselor, who had this goatee, glasses, and a Prince Charming haircut. His name was James Christopher Cohn, who wrote this book that we. And so I went there, and I remember doing cocaine the night before there, and trying to listen to music that night to fall asleep because I was nervous about going in. And this is when he did the night class, not the morning class. And I went in to get my blood pressure taken before I went into like a little small physical before I went in and started the class.
Yeah,
and they're like, your blood pressure's like 160 something. I'm like, well, I'm just withdrawing, which it really was still the cocaine going. But I guess if I was withdrawing, it still would have been the same result. I'd been totally messed up. And so I went and started doing the class, and then I went through there, and I wasn't completely honest. I still did some OCs occasionally, Oxycontin. But I was sort of just telling, these guys, hey, I'm sober, and I looked the part, acted the part, and stuff, and I got introduced to our group, essentially the guys that we know,
our home group,
and back at a meeting called Broad Highway, which was originally over in Breckenridge Lane, a small church. And when I went there, it was absolutely packed to the gills, like, because it was much smaller area than we're used to. Even the room, it's about the same size as the room we're in now on our Tuesday meeting, but everybody lined up, and I got introduced to a guy named Smitty, who became my first sponsor at that meeting. And I
didn't know that.
I joke about him this day because he gets with me and he's like, I'll meet you at me and Chris, we're gonna go see a movie, bunch of guys. You want to meet me up at this coffee shop by the movie theater, and we'll start a step work. I'm like, all right. I never showed up. And so that was like, my introduction to AA. Hey, Mom, Dad, I went to AA, look at me. And then I left. And I didn't come back to AA again until early 2011. And it progressively got worse and worse and worse. So from there, I ended up, my parents finally kicked me out of the house. And I went to the Beacon House in Louisville. A lot of those guys that run that place that work go at the Trinity Men's Meeting, God bless them, great saints in this program. And I couldn't stay sober there either. I was working at Tumbleweed at the time, being like a food runner, and going along and like not wanting to get into a drug test. So I go down down the street down Kentucky and down up to Barrett Avenue, and I get some kratom. Which, how much do you know about kratom?
Enough, but I've never done it. But I know enough about it from some of our. We got one buddy right now that was his main last thing, and I know another guy that really was in deep with the kratom.
Yeah, see, my experience is I don't know what being high on kratom feels like, because I don't know what being high on kratom.
You can move the microphone to you rather than you to the microphone. You know what I mean? I
don't know what being high on kratom is like, because I was always use it just to supplement my main drug habit.
Oh, really?
And it would help. It would help stave off withdrawals a little bit. So I don't know now. A normal person who's never done anything, if they did kratom, they probably could easily get hooked to it, just like opiates. It basically affects the same receptors, and it's nasty. It's like powdered up leaves.
Yeah.
And it's horrible going down. So,
well, that's both of these people were doing the switcheroo that I know. They were leaving something more that was harder and telling themselves that I'm only doing this and this is legal because you can get it in the stores. And so the two people I know that have some familiarity with it in my circle, we're doing the old substitution.
Yeah, that substitution. But so doing that, and then I got at the Beacon House. They had like a 3-strike policy. If you piss dirty like 3 times, you're out. And so I pissed dirty the first time, opiates, and they send me to their policy there. I don't know if it's the same today or not, but they send people to the healing place detox. And so that was my first introduction to the healing place. It is a literal homeless shelter, but with a program added on there for people who, it's like a 9 to 12 month program. You stay there, it's completely free. They feed you, they take you to class, you walk to classes, all that good stuff. But I wasn't that bad at that time, is what I was telling myself. I'm not bad enough to really go over there and live there like that. And so I go back to the Beacon House, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm back in this recovery thing. I piss dirty again, go back to the detox again, and end up getting out of there and then pissing dirty again and getting kicked out. So
you 3 strikes and out.
Yeah, out. So my parents work out something or whatever. I end up going back to the Brook again. This time I'm inpatient. I actually did inpatient. I'm there for like 8 days because I still had health insurance from UPS for a little while. And then I went in there inpatient. I went to Chris's class again. And I did a little better, I guess, overall. Very soon after I got back in, this is like in early 2011, I think. And I started going to back to the meeting with the guys and everything, and didn't really quite work out for me, obviously. Still sort of being dishonest. There were times where I was in a meeting, I'd do drugs in the bathroom. Grind it up, put it on the sink, and just put it right up my nose. Come out, hey guys.
Yep. It's a trip right in there with us.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I don't mean us like madness. Me, but the community us.
Mm-hmm. And so,
what a trip.
It kept progressing, and I ended up stealing some checks from my father and credit cards and all this kind of stuff, and they ended up finding out, and eventually they're like, Chris, my sponsor now at the time, wasn't my sponsor then, but he was when I first got sober and is again today. Mike, he was like, "You're in it right now, man." Like, and every time we come back, Chris would just smile at me. I hope you're done. Hope you're done. Each time I'd come back, So parents took me back in for a short while, and then they find out about all the credit cards and stuff and the checks that I guess it's like a month span, and they're like, I just got back from a meeting with used to be a candlelight meeting on Wednesday nights that our group had. Our good friend Eddie had drove me there, and he drove me back home. He was my sponsor for a little while.
Huh.
Then you'll find out
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
So he takes me home, and then I come home, and they're all looking at me like, what? How much did you got? Where's my credit card? And I'm like, how much did you spend on? I go $700, and they go, oh, mother. Just crying. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm out. I'm gone. I was gone. They call Eddie, and Eddie drives with my mom and dad, and we're going. And they dropped me off the Hilton place. I was dropped off. I was completely out of everything. So I go in detox again. I go in the program there. My poor grandfather, who had my mom's side, my mother's father, he had a stroke in '97, so he couldn't talk too well. I could understand everything you're saying. His like right arm was kind of like in a clenched fist sort of the rest of his life. I'd go over there and try and steal money from him and stuff and all that, throughout this too. And when I on the weekends when I was in the program, my first week in the Healing Place program, on the weekends we have until like 4 p.m. to get back. If we're not back, we're out of the program, And so during that time I left and went to my grandpa's house, stole some money, went out and got some drugs, got high, and a guy who's an absolute saint in my eyes, named Brian, was there, who worked there at the time. He's like, you're high. Like you can tell, like opiates, you can kind of tell when people are high. Like if you're in a dark room and there are people that are real small, you're high. Like, and he knows. And he was like, if you don't tell me, then it's going to be you're going to be discharged and you won't be able to come back for a year. And I was like, yeah, I'm high. So I go over to detox again. So this is like my fifth or sixth detox in my life, and I remember laying in that detox bed and looking up at the ceiling and thinking like, I can't do this anymore. Like this is not working. And I've got to give something a try. I got to do something different. And looking back, I took step one for the first time in my life, right there in that bed. And what was yours like? You remember?
My first step?
Yeah. Or the moment you decided that what was going on wasn't working.
It was that deal where I didn't have any other escape route. I thought I was going to prison.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I was, I shared that it was 6 to 20 years is what they told me, and that wasn't enough to jerk a knot in my tail hearing that. But as I walked down the path, because I said it couldn't happen to me, same way we do a lot of this other stuff, I said, well, I don't know. Even though there was a fear in me that said it would, I was just like, that just can't happen. But as it got down the pike and it looked like it was really going to happen, and it looked like I was going to it looked like I was going to be sentenced to 6 years and serve 3. I started looking for some other escape route. I didn't have any other escape route except for 12 steps.
Yeah. With your story about, hiding out in the bushes or grass, is this place?
Yeah, this is right here. Is that tree right there, right out the window?
Like that rings so true for me. Like
branches came down and trimmed up a little bit now, so it is not as good a hiding place as it used to be. We'll look at it when we leave.
Yeah, Dan's spot. We'll just draw a chalk line around it.
Yeah.
I remember doing all that kind of stuff too, sneaking in all the time stuff. So anyway, I didn't know, leading up to that point where I took my first step for the first time, I had issues with spirituality in the program. I would go to meetings and stuff, and I had a lot of, throughout this time, when I was out there in the madness, I had a lot of teachers and sort of losing the faith in the church, and sort of having people like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, one that Nick mentioned on your podcast before. Had people like James Randi.
I don't know that one.
He's a magician. He has $1 million reward for anybody who can prove supernatural, like psychics, all that kind of stuff. And if you look through stuff on YouTube and stuff, no one has claimed it yet. They haven't been able to test the supernatural in the physical world quite yet. And then people like Darren Brown, the English guy, he's also sort of a magician, a mentalist. and how easily susceptible the brain is and human beings, and how it can sway people into believing certain things or having certain experiences. And so all that, and me not understanding or saying to people and my sponsor now at the time, I'm saying, like, I can't get the spiritual thing. You guys are telling me that I don't stay sober, my higher power keeps me sober, and I can't get the higher power thing, I'm fucked. And they're like, your problem's not a second step problem, dude. You haven't worked the first step. The steps are in order for a reason. And so me taking that first step in that detox bed was me saying, all right, what I'm doing isn't working. What I've done, I want to give an honest try to do something that I've never done before. And so I got a sponsor. I had a sponsor for like 2 months or so. And that ended up working out. Still in the Healing Place, working through the program. Healing Place is you wake up in the morning, you make your bed, you have to walk down like a mile and a half, 2 miles to go to class, and you walk back. A good friend of ours in the program, Dr. Brady, he helped set up that place there. They feed you, clothe you, a clothes closet there, give you a place to sleep. And so I go through this program, and I'm there in this group of guys. They're all where I'm at, and somehow we managed not to kill each other.
Yeah.
And so I listened to my sponsor. I said, all right, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I want you to get on your knees every morning. I want you to say this: please keep me sober today. And that's all I ask. And then at night, I want you to get on your knees, and I want you to say, thank you for keeping me sober today. And this is coming from my sponsor at the time, who is a born-again Southern Baptist ordained minister. And he has the presence of mind and like the fortitude not to, to understand my situation, not impose any sort of his own religious values on me. One of the best things he ever did for me. So
Yeah.
I did that. I'm doing a thing like working through my steps and reading through the book with him. And about 3 months in, I'm looking back and I'm like, holy shit, I'm still sober. Like, I'd never been that sober for that long in my life. And so I'm like, all right, and after that first step, like, I was on fire. Like, I was like, I'm giving this a chance. I need this to work. Something has to work. So I go through my first and second step. My second step would kind of become like, hey, I'm doing this. Hey, sponsor, I'm sober. I've never been sober this long. That was like my second step, like understanding, like, I'm doing this action and I've stayed sober, and I've came to believe that something's working. And then I remember taking my third step. We went to a church and did that. I didn't really have an issue with the church we were in, being in. It's fine. We needed a quiet place. And so I remember not really feeling much on my third step, And I was like, all right, whatever. I'm still doing it. So I was like, screw it. So he got me on my fourth step, and I wasn't one of those people on my first fourth step where I was like worried about it or lagged on it. Like, I wanted to get it done. Like, I had to do it, and I almost enjoyed doing it. I was like, he gave me to do this today, this first column, I'm doing it, getting it done. And part of the program that in the Healing Place is, you go through the steps and your sponsor confirms where you're at and stuff. So I did that, and did my fourth step, dropped a fifth. On my fifth step, I dropped with him in his house, and I got some relief, but I didn't have this amazing experience that everyone always seems to talk about. Like, going through recovery, you might have experienced too, and you're like, everybody sort of puts a fifth step on a pedestal, like,
Yeah.
I got all this relief, and these butterflies are riding beside me and stuff after I got done and all this. And
I floated home. I didn't even take my car.
yeah, and so I felt like a lot of the noise in my head was gone. I'll say that. But it was sort of like, well, I'm still going. Whatever. I got to get this done. So my sponsor for my sixth and seventh step, my sponsor took me down to Gethsemane, the Abbey of Gethsemane down in Bardstown.
Yep.
And in the Big Blue Book, it talks about, going to talk to someone of religious, or what is the exact term? Dude, we would do well to talk to someone like that or whatever. So we talked to a monk down there who's also an alcoholic. I've been sober like 20, 30 years now.
30-something now, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
And so I had a talk with him, chat with him for a while, just bullshitting, like talking about, what I want to do and, in the future and where I was and where I'm at now. And And then my sponsor was like, all right, once you get time talking to him, you won't see me. I'll be around, but you won't see me. I want you to walk on top of this big old hill. It's got a big cross up there. And I want you to take your 7th step. And so after I got talking with the monk, gave him a hug, I walked up to the hill, and I had to get down on my knees, laying down like in a laying position, just like, the Japanese, they bow, then they have when they get all the way down the ground, like their head touching the ground, that's like the ultimate sign of respect. Like that's how far down I was, like, and asking God to remove what I thought of God at the time. I just used the word God, and like saying to relieve me of this bondage of self, getting there to remove these character defects that I can. And I remember standing up and turning around, and I had what I would call my first ever true spiritual experience, where this new wave of awesomeness rolled over my body. I stood up, I turned around, and this wave of just awesomeness came over me. And I smiled. I had this smile I couldn't stop. And I started walking down the hill. And it was the first time throughout this whole step process where I said, I no longer hope or think or guess that this program will work. I know this program can work. Yeah. And I know I can stay sober. And so...
so 7th step on the hill there on the cross at Gethsemane is when you had your aha moment.
Yes.
Interesting. That's probably a good point. Not a point. I mean, it's sank on me. It's like I have certain things I want to hit on when I talk to people during this podcast, and the aha moment. Mm-hmm. Some people don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I can tell. I can feel it.
And then going down the hill, and my sponsor talking about to his friends, like he's smiling to his cheeks, he's about ready to, he can't help himself anymore, and like I was just feeling good, and I was like, I knew this program can work. And so from then it was really awesome. Like just kept going to meetings, and eventually graduated from that program there. I actually sort of lied to the people there. My sponsor was a little bit slower with the steps than they wanted me to be to get out of there. So we sort of just told him, like, hey, he's doing this. He's completed his 12 steps, whatever. I really only like my 9th step, but they couldn't keep me there much longer. So we had to do sort of a gentleman's lie. But I remember sitting in front of the board, like whenever somebody graduates the program, everybody sits around. I said everybody around people at the hill in place, the people in charge and stuff, and they vote on whether they think you're good to go. And I just told them what I thought and what my experience was. And I know that the 12 steps provide a path to solve every problem in my life, not just drugs and alcohol, which is one of my favorite quotes in the big book. It's quite as important was discovered that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. Yeah. Spiritual principles, steps. And it's not just about drugs and alcohol that this 12-step program works for. Yeah. And
I just said that today a couple times, and I said it to a guy who's having that. We have those group meets, and one of the guys had one of these little revelations. He's fairly new, and I thought I was coming in here to stop drinking and drugging, and the fact was that I had a pretty shitty life, and I was looking for something better. And that's what this gave me, was something way better, and it's like, it's funny because I really was, I was convinced I just needed to stop drinking and drugging. But what I really needed was a freaking way to learn how to live. And that's what 12 Steps gave me. And then from that, I get to do things like this, the wood chop, the podcast, the retreats, all kinds of other stuff that I get to do in recovery, help other guys get sober. Hell, there's nothing better in the world than to be giving this to somebody else when they think they're early on that they're just trying to stop getting drunk. Yeah. And you're like, man, but you can't tell them, that's not, that doesn't make any sense to them at the moment. They have to have their own experience, and then later on they do like I did and go, hey, yeah, man, to quote my buddy Earl H. is the circuit speaker. You heard it, Earl? Listen to him. It goes so much further than drinking, just not drinking and drugging. So much further.
Yeah. The guy about speaking his truth, who was criticizing that guy. wasn't he like criticized a little bit in AA for speaking his truth? Earl, that guy.
Bob Earl?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different guy. Yeah, Bob Earl is one guy. This other guy that I have that I like, his name is Earl. I think his last name is actually Hightower. I maybe shouldn't say that, but I think it's Earl H. And he's a really good. If you haven't talked to me, and I'll send you a link to his talk. It's really
Hightower
really good.
is my dad's mother's maiden name or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, down in Kentucky somewhere. Yeah.
There's another speaker around from the local area. His last name is that too. I can't remember what his first name is. People talk about him.
Yeah, and so like with everything you just said there, like that, all that stuff makes human beings feel good. Every human being, not just alcoholics and addicts.
Yep.
I feel and I found, and I understand today, there's so many people are just, ignorant of the fact that especially alcoholics, that we're different than normal people.
Yeah.
Give or take, 90% of those earth people out there that aren't like us, they can't, it's hard for them to understand. They can have sympathy, but can they have empathy? And it's been a great struggle for a lot, but thankfully, like when Silkworth came along, he described it as an allergy. He didn't really have the science and the data to really understand where we were. Now today we know it's a big factor is genetics.
Yeah.
And listen to Dr. Drew and guys calling in like, I don't believe it's a disease, and then he's like, well, we've actually found like 3 or 4 different genes, A1 allele. There's a couple of other ones that do tests and they show propensity of like childs of alcoholic fathers, and that some of these children have 2 of these genes 100% guaranteed to have alcoholism. And that factor and understanding that about acceptance that I am different than most normal people, and I want to feel like I shared yesterday, like I want to feel better all the time. Like if I don't have drugs or alcohol, I need something to have a payoff.
Yep.
And
Payoff.
AA didn't have a payoff. What
wouldn't be working, no doubt. We wouldn't be doing it.
And so I really, really just like today, anyway, going back to my story, I graduated the program, and I was instantly like I'm going to start sponsoring people. Like everybody's told me that, you sponsor guys, you stay sober.
Yep.
And working with another alcoholic works where all other things fail, out of the big book. And like I was explaining to me, like, hey, whatever the things fail, well, I prayed it didn't work. I went to a meeting, it didn't work. Like all these things that may not work, working with another guy will absolutely help. So I sponsored some guys, and anyone who has been to the 12-step and sponsors someone, like seeing the change and feeling that that energy from that person changing is unlike anything we have ever experienced. Like I remember hearing my first fifth step, and I felt like I was more nervous than he was.
Yeah.
Because going into and even today, like if I do a fifth step with the sponsee, it's like I always go in like, how in the world am I going to help this guy? How in the world are we going to am I going to be able to help this guy find character defects, all this kind of stuff? But every time it works out.
Yeah.
And I have truly enjoyed working with guys. I don't really have a new guy right now, which I really hope to change that. My most recent guy was Tony. He just celebrated 2 years. He's doing pretty good. So yeah, really it's sort of like, I will continue going through some stuff I do want to share, talk about.
We got a lot of time.
So when I got out of the Healing Place, I worked for a security company, a guy that had a brother who I knew through the men's group on Tuesday night I went to before the one I go to now. And he got me a security job, worked third shift security. He hired a lot of alcoholics, and I was about the only one in maybe 10 alcoholics he hired that actually worked and showed up on time and didn't like skip out, go back to the madness. And so that went pretty good. Had a couple of raises there. I still going to meetings, sponsoring guys, doing the whole deal, having a good time, and then so I started getting back into cigars. I started getting into cigars soon after getting sober, and I never did smoke cigarettes, so I feel good about that at least. But so I worked security full time, I go to my meetings at 8 o'clock in my security uniform for a long time, and then go to work that night. And then so I eventually got a job working at a cigar shop because I love cigars, and the guy would be there fairly often, and I always seem to know a little more about cigars than a lot of other people and stuff. And a guy who was working there left for Macedonia on a mission trip, and so I asked if I could help out working, and I started working part-time and doing that whole deal. And 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I got full-time, and a year ago I'm managing the whole place.
Yeah.
And
Where's I'd say, yeah, it doesn't matter. It'd be a good commercial for. Where is it here? Where is it at? Where's the shop?
it's the corner of Spring and Market
In
in
Spring
Jeffersonville.
and Market. Yeah. Okay.
Right, you can see the photo wall, Ann's old. It's not there anymore now. They finally closed it.
Yeah, they had an old store that had a train that went around the Annie's or whatever, Ann's. I can't remember what it was called, but I know what you're talking about. It's one of the places I used to hate to go out to eat. My in-laws and their family liked to go there and I didn't like to go there because there was no alcohol at that. Like, can't y'all pick a place where I can drink a beer?
Yeah. And then my boss, the owner of the shop, saw something in me to take the risk and hire me on, and I'm so grateful for him. And he's a person in recovery. I don't know how I describe the best way I describe him is that he doesn't really go to active meetings, but to this day, like we have a cigar shop and a bar right next to each other. He owns both of those. To this day, like he doesn't drink at all. When he goes out to tastings for bourbon, like when we get our own barrel, all he does is sniff the bourbon. And he still has a keychain with like NA tags on there and stuff, you know. So, and he's like, you can't really. It's hard to own a bar if you drink a lot, And so, but one day maybe you could hear his story from him one day or something. Who knows? But
yeah, that would be cool.
I'm grateful for him so much, for trusting in me and to do my job there, and I do my best to show up on time and be there and be a normal, upstanding person in society and helping people out. And the majority of the work, it's not like it's manual labor for me.
Yeah.
And I get to see all sorts of people. And
it's almost like a consulting job, isn't it?
In a way,
you're doing. People want to know about cigars, and you have the knowledge. And it just so happens you run the cash register probably while you're there, but that's a sideline thing. And the people coming in there to gain the knowledge and experience that you have.
Yeah, and I used to think that if everyone smoked cigars on the plant, there'd be no wars. But having worked in the cigar shop and hearing all the political debates in the cigar shop and customers, I'm like, no, that probably wouldn't work.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. Yeah.
So.
Because that's kind of like one of the stereotypical thing of sitting around smoking a cigar and having the discussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, discussions, and there's no secret. I'm a little bit more on the left, and most people smoke cigars on the right, and so there's a little bit of that. So
I wouldn't have known that there was a tendency.
Yeah, in general, not all obviously,
right.
but so here in the last, I would say the last few years, like as far as recovery goes, I've sort of taken on that Bob Earl, thought speaking my truth, and sort of I don't know, you remember, sort of sharing more on spirituality and things, and where I think what my thoughts are on it.
Yeah,
and
I
stuff
like that.
And
your shares have always caught my attention since I've known you.
And I've speaking my truth, if you you were there. It was when I shared on, I wanted to sort of emulate the meeting that you hear about in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. There was a meeting that everybody set aside each week, Bill and Bob, to talk about more spiritual matters. And this is before AA even started.
Yeah. They
were still part of the Oxford group. And they're having this own thing, and they're getting this deal that the people in the Oxford group aren't getting. And eventually that helped inspire the AA we know today. And so I just wanted, I remember I had a topic that I just want to speak our truth, and I went into the thing what is my higher power? I had issues, throughout my life, obviously, believing one thing for most of my life and not believing it the next. And I basically shared in that meeting on the topic. I was like, this is what my higher power is. Like, I honestly don't know what my higher power is, but the idea to me of like a omniscient other outside the physical realm that's watching everything I do 24/7. I would never have a moment's peace, and asking me to constantly grovel to him and pray to him all the time. That feels to me like a divine North Korea.
Yeah.
It'd be like living in North Korea to me. So, and I never really liked that idea of something that's watching me all the time. And I wanted to sort of share that truth, my truth, with those people there. And it ended up being a really good meeting, and people being honest, and ultimately understanding that, AA is sort of where the multitude of beliefs and thoughts like can meld and not meld, because we don't generally talk about them all that much, and we really don't. And it's true that we really don't care what you believe,
Right.
But there's also a little bit of taboo in a way, like there is even from me, like sharing what I think. Like I'm one of the least religious guys there, I guarantee it. But sharing my truth is almost kind of like a taboo in a way of people sharing, oh, Jesus Christ did this,
Yeah, right.
Because I always have the newcomer in mind, and how is that going to affect the newcomer?
Well, there's this thing, there's this dynamic, and I don't quite understand it, but it seems that to me that when somebody is like presenting their point of view, and we have to, and I'll put myself in that boat because I tend to lean that way, even though as much as I know that this is not maybe what's going on, I think it's like evangelistic kind of thing where, because you're sharing your truth to me, that I have something in my head that tells me you're trying to convince me of that I should have it too.
Yeah.
And that's not the actual fact, and even when it comes to stuff like it's one thing when you get the Jehovah's Witnesses and they're knocking on your door and they're trying to convince you in a sense, and maybe they're not though. I go, hey, maybe they're just sharing their truth in a way that's just different than mine, and I don't have to look at it like they're trying to push something on me. That seems to be like when anybody brings the Christianity thing to me, I instantly, and that's a Bob Earl thing. Anytime you bring something that's working for you to me, I instantly reject it completely. I'm like, nope, I got my thing. It doesn't matter. And I even see it, and I joke around with it. You can even bring a damn plate full of cookies around and go, would you like one? And I go, no, thank you. I'm okay. And so I watched that, and another thing that's come to me is that the thing about the AA is that I bang this drum a little bit. Is that when I got here, I was really encouraged to develop the higher power of my own conception, and I was really encouraged to do that. And that made no sense to me because I didn't know that was actually possible. I thought I had to get into somebody else's box. That was the whole thing all along. And like you said, I felt this need to I felt this pulling or something. I don't even know where to put it, but I felt like I was being maybe even coerced to get into these other boxes. Now, I think it was faulty logic at some level. I think it was just people were offering me
it's like
something.
When I said, you guys are telling me higher power keeps me sober, but I don't believe it. So what are you trying to pull me some way?
So I was honestly encouraged to cultivate this relationship with this higher power that I didn't understand, and I could make it up myself, just like I had pulled out the silly putty out of the egg, and I get to format it and make it the silly putty whatever shape I wanted to make it my higher power. But even better than that, what happened was that I started developing this higher power. If mine didn't match, I was able to have mine, and you didn't reject me for whatever mine was. That's where we don't. You said something about we're allowed to in a way. I don't remember what word you said about we don't. You said we don't even care what yours is. And I like it, but more importantly to me is we don't reject one another for what our idea of a higher power is. But I still find myself put walls up. And I feel like I'm fairly evolved.
And actually, one of the surprisingly the day we started our meeting, or the week before, or 2 weeks before we started the meeting we're at now, we were at the Tuesday night meeting. I don't know how much it played, but there were people that were sharing in that meeting certain ways and certain, I don't know, some a little bit religious, but it wasn't just that. It was a multitude of things. And I see our friend Chris and Darren and Brian and I think maybe our friend Brandon staying around in a circle after the meeting, and I'm like, I'll just walk up there, and they're like, what do you think about doing? No, my basement's open. Like, what is going on? They're thinking about, they wanted to start a new meeting and get away from sort of what really was sort of standing in the way of their spiritual need to grow, at that meeting. And so we commenced to start in that meeting. And so I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, you're one of the founding members there too, huh? And it is, we can say it. I mean, I try not to say people's last names in here. That's about the only thing I try not to say. I have a little bit of thing about saying AA, but I don't really know why. I mean, that's just where I found it. So I don't know. It'd be like saying, if it was, if I found my favorite socks at the Kroger's or the Walgreens or the Walmart, then I can't sit here and say those names. I get the anonymity principle, but I think it's a little bit antiquated personally. I'm out there. I started doing a recovery podcast and broadcasting it to the fucking world.
Yeah.
My anonymity is blown, and now I can't say these two letters, AA. But
well, then you have the dichotomy of AA anonymity versus TSSR anonymity, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, right. There is a difference, no doubt. Yeah. And when more was going, so the name of the meeting is Spiritual Underground, which is the name founding member. That's where this podcast, because of a bunch of people from the Spiritual Underground.
We can thank our friend Patrick for doing the tying vote. It was going to be Language of the Heart. Almost, it was.
Was it?
And he decided. And I like spiritual. I voted Spiritual Underground anyway. But
did you? Yeah. Well, I personally have a very tight affinity for it, and since it was a bunch of Spiritual Underground people were responsible for starting this podcast. That was also the name it was adopted on this, and I don't know how kosher that totally is, but that's what it is now. And we didn't really ask anybody permission to use that name. Anyway, it's my whole point there was we was kind of dodging around the formation of that meeting and how it came about. I've heard the story about there were some perceived guardrails in a particular other meeting that seemed to be keeping some people inside of lanes they didn't feel that their spirituality needed to be stayed in, needed to be walled into, and they decided they wanted to do something a little different and open up and share. And we share stuff in here that's fifth step material, not to be shared outside. And you do hear a different level of sharing in that meeting than I hear in any other, except for now the TSSR stuff. And in that I'm hearing I'm hearing sharing at similar kind of levels in these meetings.
So that was my first TSSR meeting. I can't ever make the Thursday meeting because I'm working. So it was very interesting to me to see some people not being sure what to say, their name, or alcoholic or whatever. I just like, I'm Justin. How's it going?
Yeah, I like that too. That's what I say some different things. I said I'm one of them too.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, I'm one too. I'm part of today.
So, today is just, I'd say one of my greatest struggles and triumphs at the same time is developing a higher power, in a recent time. And, I have my own thoughts about certain things. So for example, when I first got sober, my first year and 3 years in recovery, I was like, I'm going as spiritual as I can.
Pull that out in front of you a little bit more. Move the microphone, I'm
going to spiritual.
I get in a way where I don't want it in my face, and it feels like it's in between me and you in a way, but I think that's just something you have to live with.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I was like, I'm going all out. I'm going to do every spiritual thing I can. So I met our good friend Darren, and he introduced me to a plethora of spiritual techniques and things to, sort of play with, and things like Reiki and the stones and things like that. And sort of what happened to me was, and Darren has repeated this before, but both me and him both were in that, I think, in that meeting when he heard Dr. Brady say, we want to be careful not to get so spiritual you can think you can actually take a drink.
Yeah.
Which at the time I actually sort of like, when I was doing like all this meditation stuff with him and doing it, I was like, this feels so fucking good. I can do anything. That thought crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Like, and anybody who probably does meditation and recovery, probably who's gotten into it, like, it's just this overwhelming power that it's like, wow, like, hell, if I took a drink, why would it matter? That sort of thought, like, I'm so spiritual now. And so I sort of backed off a little bit on overall spirituality in a way. Like, Reiki in itself is interesting, and anyone who practices it I don't have a problem with, but it's when they start trying to heal people of ailments and stuff where I kind of get a little weirded out by it, because the fact of the matter is, if it actually worked to heal people's things, we wouldn't have doctors. people would be out there healing people all the time of ailments. That's when it gets a little more people trying to make money and things off of that and stuff, because there's just no evidence right now to confirm that actually happens. People get like a lot of like what I talked about Darren Brown, like the mind is a thing that people really getting to the point where we can get that high and feeling, and we might feel cured for a while, but it ends up coming back. And so I'm a little weird about that, and like the stones and like these things here, like it's fine for me, like if you feel like they have a spiritual energy or whatever energy in them, but there's no way to confirm that energy actually transfers from these to my hand for me. Mm-hmm. So,
and what he's talking about, I have some of my own symbols I make in my wood shop sitting here, so that's what he's speaking of at the moment. Yeah. Most of the time I have some, and the reason I don't have my crystals in here is because I took them inside the other day when I went over to the yoga studio. I had packed up all my podcast gear and went and did the podcast with the yoga studio owner Sunday, and I didn't take the crystals with me because I usually don't take them on the road, but I usually have everything in that tub here, and they're outside. So I'm one that I would just say that I subscribe to that. There's energy in this stuff. Yeah. I think there's energy in this table. I think everything is made of energy.
Physically, yeah, obviously it's made of atoms, and
yeah, and so I think there's something to that. Now, what it really does for you, I fall back to that, because I've generalized. I've been allowed to broaden my thoughts on a lot of things beyond the narrow wall. And so, like when it says things like, and I'll say that like where the beginning is when it says when we're going to do a 4-step out of the big book, and it says we're going to put all the people that we're angry at. And that's what it tells you to do. That's the instructions in the book. Make a list of everybody you're angry at, doesn't it? I mean, and it doesn't say anything else. Well, when I did a 4-step, I was guided to do a 4-step of everybody basically that had an impact on my life, not just angry. The people who were that was maybe nice. You didn't jump. That has happened before, and I knew I needed to turn it off, and I forgot. That's my air compressor kicking on. So, and I'll just preface that with this podcast is real. Yeah. It doesn't have edited, and we're not highly produced and all that. So I was allowed to I was encouraged to broaden my definition of the word resentment into something that doesn't necessarily. It's a whole bunch of things. It's people I harmed. It's people that's harmed me. It's people that get on my nerves. It's people who have formed who I am today, like moms and dads. I would have told you the first time I went through the steps that I wasn't mad at my mom. I wasn't angry, And he said, put her on a list anyway. Yeah. And so to like tangent from there, what I also look at is like when I say, okay, I get my own conception of a higher power, right? So like I get to conceptualize that these things have power. Yeah. And you don't reject me because I've done that, right?
I was about to say.
And so and same thing with the crystals. And I do believe there's a little bit of a placebo effect in everything. I think what I think will work. I think I have some power to manifest my stuff in around me into things to happen around. I think I can voice things to the universe and they can come to fruition. Now, I'm not saying I can do like rub on the genie, the Aladdin's lamp and make shit happen. I'm not talking about magic, and I still don't understand this, but this wood shop is one of them. I've always wanted this, and it manifested. Yeah. So just to take it just one little step further, like what meditation is to people. There's a lot of ways to meditate, right? And we kind of have a thing where we think we sit with low, so like last night, it was low lights, trying to be quiet at the meditation meeting, although there's ambient noise going on around us that can be bothersome.
Chris is the only smart one with the earplugs.
Yeah, I saw as I come out and I saw that he had those on. That was a tremendously smart idea, no doubt. He's a smart guy. But I get to have my own conception of what meditation means to me. So when I start talking about this terms of my own conception of, when we said, it was limited in the beginning to my own conception of a higher power. But I get to broaden the definition of that into my own conception of lots of things, And it gets to be a little bit like, oh, so you just can make some shit up there? Is that what you're telling me? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I get to make up my own fucking rules today.
And the way, like, we'll take the example of me on the hill, for example, my spiritual experience. Like, so I'm on the hill, I have a spiritual experience. How do I go about determining how that occurred? how do I go about did it come from something supernatural? Did it come from something physical? The truth is, I don't know. And for me to claim that I do know, I think it would be ignorant of me.
Again, yeah.
You know, and so I try to be as honest with myself as I can. And I'm very much someone who's based in the physical world and a lot of things that I do. And so in meditation, I can go close my eyes and get peace. I have physical reactions while I'm meditating, and it makes me feel good. And so and I can't determine whether what those things make me feel good are supernatural or physical. But I don't want to take the jump to say it's supernatural right now because I don't have the evidence for that right now. And so I'm ever in the pursuit of finding and finding the evidence for those things. But it hasn't quite really came out yet for me.
Yeah,
on that
level. So like I would qualify that. I would put that under the category of continuing to enlarge my spiritual life. That's, continuing to keep your eyes open, continue to be open to whatever this stuff is, continue to allow, because like you said, even though maybe you're not. Have you ever had Reiki performed on you?
Yeah.
Did you get any kind of sensation out of it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I get a pleasurable sensation out of it. A lot like I've had taken to allow. I get massages every 3 weeks, real ones, deep tissue massage. It's good for me. I think it's good for my tissue and my well-being and my body. I think it moves things around in me. I think it actually helps displace energy. And if you want to say so if I wanted to actually qualify that, would be in a sense some pulled up tension and things like that. And I'm able to move that energy around so that I can discharge it and get it into my endocrine system and move it along and process it. It also feels good. The girls got cool energy. I'll be completely frank about this. When somebody's rubbing on me, it feels good.
Yeah.
Frank did Reiki on me as I laid on this table after the last podcast a couple weeks ago, whenever he was here.
Yeah.
I think it was last Wednesday, and I felt good when he was doing Reiki on me. Now I didn't tell him anything, okay?
Right.
I didn't tell him. I didn't lead him into anything. And when he got up, he said, "There's something going on in your shoulder," and he's right. I have pulled a bow that's too heavy for me, and for almost a year now, I've been nursing and having an issue in the shoulder. And he stood up and got off of me and told me there was something going on in my shoulder without me leading him to that information at all. Mm-hmm. He also said that something in my chest is very hot. I've been told a number of times that my heart chakra is strong and flows powerful. I'm drawn to the color green. I'm drawn to note F. I didn't know this stuff until I started allowing myself to be open to it. Mm-hmm. So I believe that's what he was feeling in my chest also, I believe. But he told me those two things unsolicited. Now, the heart thing is could be a little new agey, a little
right.
That. But the shoulder is real. That's a bow scale, that blue thing. That bow, I bought a couple bows from a guy, and I shot one of them, and he told me they were both 56 pounds, and one of them was marked and one of them wasn't. And I went out here and shot one of them, and I was like, man, I kind of like this thing, man. I shoot traditional bow. And I picked up the other one. I had to make strings for them, or they didn't have strings, so I actually had to I made Flemish twist strings for them, and I had them strung up, let the strings relax. And I picked up the other bow, and I drew it just like I was going to draw the other one. And I was used to it. Used to that 56 pounds. That's what I draw normally. And when I did, man, something went whack when I pulled that bow back, and I'm still having issues with it. But he felt that. I've had another couple other times when people did Reiki on me, and I had the same kind of experience where I didn't tell them what was wrong with me, and I had a little ache or something, and they told me where it was at. Said, I felt something in your ankle. And I was like, yeah, I twisted it just the other day. I'd sprained my ankle running someplace or doing something, tripped onto something a few days before, and it was sore, and they knew it.
Well, see, my thing would be like, well, all right, fine, let's get these Reiki people to do that and test these people out and see how many they can actually.
That one thing they didn't say, they didn't claim to be doing any healing on me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was no claims of making anything better.
Right.
They just shared their experience with me, and they picked up some energy.
Right.
And I don't know either. I don't. There's proof that placebo pills will work, right? They've actually done studies where they will prove that if they tell you this pill does this and you take it,
Oh yeah.
So so that maybe it probably falls into that same category as what I was saying. Some of this manifests in my own stuff, so that's where I'm getting a little bit, and it gets to be a little hoity-toity, it gets to be a little fruity on it. But the healing principles of, if somebody tells me they've healed me, and if I believe it, Frank has had some ailments that are gone now.
Yeah.
And some other people's got some ailments that have disappeared. I don't really know exactly what's going on. I can guess, like my lower back problems that I actually have documented by MRI, which were a golden ticket for some pain pills at one point in my life.
Yeah.
Have been eliminated, but I believe that's through a practice of yoga. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really the truth of the matter there is I've built my core up. Mm-hmm. I've strengthened my core up so that is not a problem now. The muscles around that area are compensating and keeping that from being a problem.
Gotcha.
So I don't, it is. It's funny. I'm open to like discussing and not poo pooing any of it.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I'm also a bit skeptical at times.
Yeah. I mean, I like to keep like what the physicist Lawrence Krauss says. I like to keep an open mind, but not so open my brains fall out.
Yeah.
So it's just like someone has a claim. Someone feels better after having some sort of spiritual thing. How do we go about demonstrating that that's actually what happened?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm, where I concern myself with a lot of times. And ultimately, can it be harmful or not to another person? Mm-hmm. Just like forget Reiki. Look at all the preachers who go out there and hit their heads on people's face and they pass out, and the people who haven't walked stand up. And hell, a week later, when all the adrenaline runs off, they're back to where they were. So there's obviously, the fact is, I don't think it really does anything other than placebo effect personally. Until someone can demonstrate to me that it's something other than that, I'm still open to that evidence to come through. But you sitting there, Dan, like how well has it helped you so far? A whole lot. Like in a lot of ways, and it makes you feel better. And me as an alcoholic, I want to feel better all the time, and it sure as hell is a lot better than drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's sort of where I land on that in a way. But
yeah, it is. It's nice not to. It's nice not to argue about it, But I do. I tend to fall in that Bob Earl little thing where he says, if you when you bring me something that's working for you, I'm instantly skeptical about it anyway. He says I will reject it, but maybe I don't so much reject it. Maybe my instant tendency is to doubt, to be doubtful.
Yeah.
To be skeptical.
I base my life a lot on doubt, a lot of things, and doubt first, and trying to do my best to find out what's true and what works. And
because I didn't think the 12 steps would work for me.
And pragmatism, 12 steps, working through it. And, I'm still sober today. It's freaking awesome. And also just looking at other people in the program and in life. I try to keep myself. The way I keep myself rational is, like what Jordan Peterson says, like assume the other person knows something you don't. Mm-hmm. I also add on to that. Remember, they're also a primate, just like you. We're human beings on this planet who had the evolution of having a consciousness, and that we're different. We're still mammals. And so, which, by the way, I'll get this out of the way. Jordan Peterson's a lot of his work is very freaking awesome and helpful to a lot of people. I'm not a fan of his political stuff at all. I can't stand him in his political field, but despite what people on the left may want to think, a lot of his psychological stuff is very good. And I love that Russell Brand, when he talked to him about 12 steps, and they went through each step and stuff and talked about that. That was fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. I just love listening to it. I feed my head, and I don't have to today subscribe to every single thing somebody says, but I really like, and I instantly reject anything political today because I am apolitical. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some teachings and programming that I am not shucked. Because I am, I don't really know how this come about. My dad is pretty liberal, really liberal, but I am not. I lean the other direction. I lean to be conservative. I don't really know where that comes from. I don't know. But today when I got that felony,
I thought they got me off the hook, and I thought I actually was going to like get my golden ticket there, you know, kind of like my golden ticket for my pain pills in my lower back. I thought I had a golden ticket to where I didn't have to deal with politics anymore, and then somebody informed me that actually the fact is in this state of Indiana, you can still vote when you're a felon. And I was like,
Can't Kentucky.
Damn it. I didn't want to be able to do that. But I decided, you know what, man? It was working so good for me to just check out all that because I don't watch any TV. And the fact of the matter is, people will tell me that I'm neglecting my civil duty to vote. And you know, right now, I am not qualified to vote, man. I am so checked out that I don't know anything about the issues. I would just be punching a button, and I think that's actually really...
The only time I watch news now is if somebody happens to have it on at work. We have TVs at the cigar shop. That's about the only time I ever actually watch news.
When I go someplace and the TV's on, it actually gets on my nerves today. Like I go to the dentist and take the kids to the dentist, and there'll be a TV on to entertain the kids, and especially to be some kind of SpongeBob or some kind of nonsense at that level. And I cannot deal with it, or I'll go someplace and there'll be a news on and on the TV, go sit down at McDonald's or something and do step work, and there'll be a TV on, and it just gets on my freaking nerves, just like I don't know really how to even say it, crying baby or something, you know. It's just, but I can't, I just don't. I checked out of the process, and that's okay for me, you know. But I do. So I like when you say Jordan Peterson's and his political views. I know he leans conservative, but I really don't even pick any of that up when I listen to him. You know, I don't even like. It's not even like something. I don't know if I'm mentally filtering it or if I subscribe to it. So it's since it's not against my natural tendencies, because I do believe that too. You know how he says some stuff about how we're naturally. Like we're born at some level to lean certain directions politically. Is that part of like what you agree or disagree with?
Oh well, obviously the way you grow up, yeah. And well, I mean, what studies we know about?
You know those big 5 trait tendencies. He says if you test that, that's really not something. Now I guess I don't really know the answer to that. But if you take that test, have you ever taken his test? You can go online and take it for free.
Okay.
His Who Are You, and you can see where you're at in that big 5 trait stuff. And so I've done that, you know, and he says, you know, by where you're, and I'm sure some of that's nature and nurture, but he said where you lean in those traits will cause, you know, that's the way you will lean politically too.
Gotcha.
I don't really know, you know, to some extent it starts to sound like sort of like when we may have some genetic shit that causes you to lean politically. To certain ways, you know, and I don't doubt that, but I don't totally hear it. So since when he's speaking, maybe since it doesn't go against my natural grain, let's say, then maybe I don't like pick up on it. And since it does more lean and it goes against your grain, then maybe that makes you more aware of it when he's talking. See what I'm saying?
And also he, like in his YouTube videos, there's a distinction between a lot of his psychological stuff and his, you know, like you've seen the videos where he's teaching his class. You know, all that stuff's great stuff. I love that stuff.
It's lecturing class.
Yeah. So. Yeah,
I like it too. And I listen, you know, they pop up all the time because people have taken the sound bites and collecting them up. So I was listening to one today, you know, and I just get hopped up.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm like listening to it because I hear this stuff about like this self, you know, taking care of yourself. You know, you are responsible for making your stuff happen, you know, and which gets a little bit, you know, that's also... Am I leaning on a higher power, or do I do, you know, and we say the program is you know, I'm going to be relying on this higher power, but it's a program of action. So you got to do some shit, you know. And I don't really know how, I do, but I can't like tell you how that works. I don't really get it. I know that it's working for me. I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of participation in my recovery. I get some unique ways to do it like this.
Yeah, and what Nick said was Nick was saying, like, it isn't, you don't want to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine, and it's like, that when I first came into the program, it's like came around before I got sober. I'm like, how are all these people staying sober and I'm not? And then now it's sort of reversed in a way. It's like, you know, how am I staying sober and they aren't?
Yeah.
And it was, and Chris sort of put it out like, you know, well, the people stay sober did the work.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And
like
getting to that point of where there's like that. For me, I had that gift of desperation, you know, of wanting to try something new, and. Everybody has some form of a bottom, it seems like. And most people, everyone I've met who stayed sober any long amount of time remembers that moment. Some people may be a little more foggy because when we first get sober, we don't really know where we're at or whatever. But
yeah, that's some of the things. That's one of the cool things about doing this with a sponsee.
like some of my sponsees who have sat at the other side of this table, I know some of the early story a little clearer than they know it. Because they were still fogged up and they've got some idea about how certain things happen. Chase and I have some differing things of how it happened in the beginning with him and I. But and both of them is okay. It's nothing none of it matters. But it's interesting that. So I when I look back, I'm a little careful too about making certain assertions. Because I'm not sure that, just like you said earlier, I'm not sure I'm right. And that's a cool thing to be today, right? I really like the fact that I don't have to be right today. And that I can fuck some things up and I can be wrong and
that's
it's
a big
okay.
thing for me. Like the word, the words "I don't know" is not a bad thing.
No, it's actually great.
Like now, we as humans hate not knowing things.
Yeah, I need to know.
And it's okay to say "I don't know" today, and I'm okay with that. But again, I'm a little guarded on making the claim of something in the affirmative for certain things and whatever, and I just say I don't know.
Yeah,
because I don't have enough evidence for it at the moment.
And and when I can say about myself that when I know something, when I really do, then that means I do.
Yeah.
I'm not out there saying things anymore that I don't know. I may be pulling your leg. I'm a bit of a jokester and tell you something with a straight face, even though I know I'm not telling you that. I see you keep on looking up there. Are we on a time thing? Okay, I'm just making sure. I think one thing I do, there's two things I want to speak about. One of them is I had a big, not in my step work actually, but I had a big experience up on top of that hill too. After I'd already been through the steps, and I couldn't go down there because I had that ankle bracelet on. They wouldn't let me go to Gethsemane when I was in my step work with Christopher the first time around. The first time we went down there in a December time frame, like we do every year, go down there and have a meeting. I was encouraged to lag behind and reaffirm my seventh step up on the hill. And that particular day was one you never know what you're going to get around here weather-wise ever. I'd like to say a certain time of year, like it's springtime, you never know what the weather's going to be like here.
Yeah.
But you'll know what the weather's going to be like. You may not know what the weather's going to be like anywhere. I don't know. They say Southern California, it's just so steady that it's steady Eddie all the time, but here it ain't. So in this particular December, it was pretty cool, but it wasn't cold like it could be, and the wind was just kicking because you're up on top of that hill. Yeah. And when we were standing around in our circle with our arms around each other doing that prayer work at the end, where we go around the circle and pray, and really just whatever people just speak out to whatever they want to speak to, you almost were holding each other up. You could feel the wind gusting and people were moving with the wind, and you was bracing yourself against the guy next to you, and everybody was standing up there together. And when I went over and everybody went down the bottom hill, I did like you, and I knelt down. And I was a little self-conscious about staying behind because I was still new enough that I cared like what y'all thought about me. But I did. I knelt down up there, and I had my big book with me, and I opened it up to the 7-step prayer, and I read it, and I did a little free forming, whatever that is that I do, prayer, whatever, and free formed it, and it come to me all of a sudden that the wind had completely stopped. That it was as still as like if I was in a freaking globe or something. And it stayed that way for a number of minutes, and it just had that rush over me, that feeling, the tingles, some people, the kundalini. I don't know. Yeah. Do you get that chills and stuff? Because I've been starting to ask people about that because I get them so regularly that I assume everybody does. But I actually have talked to a few people that's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Meditation here that when I'm at my ears will kind of get hot.
I get a tingling in my body, an actual palpable tingling that is like a buzz. It's like that euphoric rush of when the chemical hits you.
It was definitely the same for me when I had my experience. Yeah.
And so I get those fairly often. I get them sitting here doing this podcast. I get them when I'm doing some woodworking time. I get them really often. I get them when I'm sitting when I'm sitting with Robin. I get those tingles that I'm just like, yeah, man, I am like right here.
You should have that same experience with your dog outside. You'd be all right.
Yeah, if I could get that damn dog to do the same thing, I would be really hopping. So I had that up on top of that hill, and I've heard of a number of people up on top of that hill who have experienced things that, some kind of supernatural something or another. I don't really know what category to put on it, but people have had these experiences up on top of that hill. The other thing that I want to talk about, and I'll let you,
there's some things when I'm in this podcast I want to hear about. Is some of it's like childhood stuff and how you grew up. You've talked about that. I think that's important. Some people like skip right up to like their drinking and things, you know, and you know, I think I was formed. I think some things I know some things happened to me before I ever took my first drink that shows that I have this mental difference between me and other people. I think that's important to talk about. Obviously, we always want to talk about the story of this thing about recovery and what brought us to, you know, where we are and our step work and that kind of thing. Another thing I always try to encourage people to talk about is I call them miracles. I know some people think that word's a little strong. Some really great shit has happened to me in recovery, and I think it's good to beat on that and talk about that. You've shared on a few of those, but there's one particular day that you know, one of the things that we get to do is we get to survive some things that I would have said were not survivable to some extent, and then you hear a lot of people talk about. Chase talks about, you know, that he always had this thing out there that like when a certain event happens, that's going to allow me to drink again. Like if this ever happens to me, I won't, you know, that'll be my ticket, my golden ticket again. Or, you know, and I think we all have this little bit of like a dark cloud behind us in a way that we kind of have this thing about, man, if the worst thing ever happened to me, I don't know if I could survive. Yeah. I don't know if my recovery would survive. Now, I've had some pretty rough shit happen to me in recovery, and I've actually not spoken about the one on the podcast, the one biggest one of them. I kind of hesitate to do it for some personal reasons of somebody maybe hearing this podcast and I had to watch out because I don't know where to go with that. I know it's going to come out sooner or later. I really do. I know it's going to, but one day I was coming to a meeting and I specifically remember this, and I hope it's okay if I talk about it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I specifically remember coming into a meeting one day, into the Spiritual Underground meeting on a Tuesday night with some shit on my back, and I actually thought I was considering doing a burning desire on my problem that I had of the day. And the fact that right now sitting here, I got no idea what the hell it was. I don't know. I know it was relatively small in the grand scheme of things. And if I remember right, it was something like a bad day at work or some bad days at work, or maybe it was a girlfriend problem. I can't remember. It was something of that nature, you know. And I walked in and you had shared that you'd lost your brother.
Yeah.
And time after time I came into the meetings with my little problems, and somebody else would make my problem really small really quick. And that was one day that I actually was impacted. I remember I'm fogging up, my eyes are tearing up a little bit just thinking about that day, because it touched me, and I'm like, you know, and I like that. That's why I don't have any idea what my little problem was, because bam, you came in, and we get to do that today. And what I see, I have a vision of that. And it happened to me one day too when I came in, and I had a problem that was way bigger than anything that I could ever even begin to think I could manage. And what I felt was the loving arms of a group of men come underneath of me and basically hold me up and allow me to stay sober, and allow me to actually do way more than that. Actually process a particular very traumatic event in my life in a way, and actually I was in a freaking healthy fashion, and it actually in a way where I got an opportunity to help other people. You know, it was beyond just being able to do what I needed to do to stay okay. I actually was able to, when I presented my thing, I actually found that it helped other people do it. So would you want to share on that event?
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, the 3 years ago, my brother passed away. He was 19 years old. His name's Bradley. He was shot and killed by one of his best friends. To this day, we don't know what really happened, whether it was an accident or... It seems the evidence there, the scene and stuff, is pointing more toward an accident. The guy who did it, you know, called the police on himself, essentially, and was like, you know, this happened, but we never really heard. So, this was when I was working third shift, so I went to bed, and an hour after I went to bed, I was woken up by my dad, and my dad was like, you know, Bradley, he's been killed, shot and killed. And so people think about like losing people as like a dream, you know. Well, it was literally felt like a dream, because I had an hour of sleep, and I'm like, I don't know if this is real or not. So I go upstairs, and the coroner's there, and the policeman officer's there, and they inform us, you know, he's gone. And I remember sitting there with my family and crying with them for a little while. And the next thought in my mind was literally like, I've got to start calling people in recovery.
Yeah.
I am eternally grateful for this program for giving me the tools to, in that moment, have that thought.
Yeah. Because when we talk about the practicing these principles in all our affairs, that's exactly what we mean. It's not being mad at the person at the red light because they're not moving forward when the light turns green.
Yeah.
You know, those things help us practice this. It's for these events that you're talking about now is when the tools come in and actually be fucking real.
Yeah, and so I went outside on my deck and started calling people, everyone I could think of. Call my boss and stuff, and I was off that day and went to a meeting that night. But the love at that, you know, I went to it was a Saturday or Friday or Saturday night. Friday or Saturday was a day, I can't remember which day. But anyway, I went in there on that Tuesday meeting. Of course, most people already knew who I talked to in that meeting about it, but sharing on it and just literally what you said, like suffering with me together, you know. And I wish more people in recovery had that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when new people come in, it's like, I don't like this meeting or that. It's like you have to find them. They're around. One meeting, you know, just because the meeting's close to your house doesn't mean it's the only one.
Yeah, and that's probably not it either.
You know,
I found that's kind of goes into this this little spiritual axiom of going to any length.
Yeah.
It's usually not the closest meeting to your house.
Right.
Not to say that it can't be, but
Yeah. So I, part of, you know, I'm actually working. I haven't done a 4-step since that, and I'm actually working on a 4-step now through TSSR. I just finished my fear inventory. I got my 6, and that's it for my 4-step.
Very cool.
So I've been very diligent about doing a calm a week and then getting whatever. So that'll be interesting when I get to my 5th step and actually talk about it. But like what's interesting, I don't know I have no idea if this is because of the program or not, but like ill will and ill feelings toward the guy who shot my brother don't really exist.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
You know,
I love
part
that.
of it has to do with like, you know, it probably was an accident or something, you know, because it's inside a house. They could have been planting a gun. I don't know. But he never said nothing about it. Of course, if you have an attorney, he's never going to ask him to say. He never did. The grand jury decided there wasn't enough evidence to actually indict him of murder. So my mom has filed like a wrongful death sort of thing because it's in his house or whatever. But from what I talked about the cops and stuff, like it could have been absolutely been an accident. And that 4-step prayer, you know, like that this could be a sick person. You know, how can I be of service to him? You know,
man.
just like, and it's so weird. Like I didn't feel too bad overall about it, but like I felt bad about not feeling bad, if that makes any sense a little bit. Like, because I felt like my parents definitely took it way worse than I did overall. They don't. My dad sort of has a program in a way, and he's been sober 20, almost 30 years. About 7 of it with the program, I guess. He quit drinking, but he never went to the program till later. And his sponsor was a guy named Dick B at the Trinity Men's Group for a while. But
I think I know him.
yeah, and so I'm looking
They
back.
moved to Florida.
Yeah. Well, I think he lives in the winter time. I don't know if he permanently moved there or not.
Yeah, it's got to be the same guy.
Yeah. So I just looking back on that time, like in that moment, like it was just. It started with when I first got sober. My sponsor said, "I want you to call me every day." To where
Right.
it gets
Yeah.
normalized.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, because now when I call, when I know, I go, what do I do? What do I do? I go, man, I got to call some
And
people
all those techniques that was ingrained to me in early sobriety.
because you practiced.
And then my sponsor's doing it to me when, you know.
Yep, I have the same rule. Call me every day. I want it
And-
to be in a time frame too. I don't say just open up and call me whenever.
Yeah. So the thought of drinking and drugging never came up through any of that.
Yeah,
Which is, all right, I'll say, you know, it's partially a miracle.
that is miracle stuff.
You know, miracle stuff. And so during that time, there was never a point in time where I was like, I need to feel better, so I'm thinking about drinking and drugging. It was like, I need to call people to feel better. I need to talk to guys in recovery. I need to, you know, get really wrapped in the pocket of the people around me to make me feel better. And that's the ultimate triumph of the program for me.
Yeah, right.
You know?
That is whatever something is doing for me. What I couldn't do for myself. I promise that I wouldn't be able to move through those kind of things in any kind of reasonably healthy manner without this program. Do some kind of, I've given some talks and had the opportunity to do that a bit, and heard you say something about, and I don't really know exactly how you said it, but I found myself in a talk saying, I don't know how that happens. A couple of number of times when some things were happening, I thought, I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
And this is a similar kind of thing. Some of it's like a muscle memory thing. Some of it's almost like a training. We are somewhat trained, and I'm glad. As I practice these things in my life, I've become trained to be okay with calling people, because that certainly is not in my nature to call and reach out to people. Yeah. And now it is. I spend a tremendous amount of time on either texting or telephone calls, or in contact with people at some level, one way or another today. The fact that you didn't have to be mad at this guy, right? And that's that resentment thing we talk about. That's that broader. Now that is actually the term in the Alcoholics Anonymous book of being angry with somebody, as far as a resentment definition goes.
Yeah. And make no mistake about it, his name's on my list. It came up when
needs to be. Right. Absolutely, no doubt. Yeah, he needs to be on the list. I'm not saying that. Yeah, because a lot of people, that's that when in doubt, write it out, man. We process this stuff and we put it down, and that way it doesn't end up being a thing, right? Because we do have this tool to put them down. Yeah, man. Yeah, that guy needs to be on the list.
Definitely.
Nobody will hear this yet before, but I have the 8-step lead tonight. And to me, the 8-step lead is all. The 8-step is all about forgiveness, and that is the instant thing that comes to me whenever that thing of being able to forgive. That being my reflex today, rather than my reflex of rage, conviction, the judgment. All those kind of things being my reflex when something like what you just explained happened, not to mention the people in the car that don't go when the right turns green. But my instant reflex today is forgiveness for these folks rather than those other attitudes. And that, man, is just such an easier way to freaking live,
Yeah. A lot of it, what I think you're talking about is that mindfulness.
Comes with that
mindfulness and contemplation, like a lot of that. So we tell ourselves. So today, like someone cuts me off in traffic, I've trained myself to think like, well, what's this guy going through right now?
Yep.
Is he on his way to the hospital? Is he on? I don't know if that's what.
Might just lost his job. He might be late for something big. They might have just called him.
And we can do also the same thing.
Somebody just might have called him and told him his damn brother is passed.
And so now we can do the same thing in a positive manner. When I smoke a cigar, I can stop and think about all the 200 different hands that went to make it the cigar, where it's from, the people who made it, the flavors I'm getting. I can do it in a positive way too. Yep. The mindfulness and contemplation, like.
Yep. And I can never remember if I'm right unless I'm seeing it. But tick non hot or tick hot non, it's one of the two. It's hot non or non hot. I can't remember which one it is. I need to do something to trick myself into remembering that. Do you know who he is? He's a monk he's a Buddhist monk from Vietnam. If you don't know who he is, you should look him up.
I don't.
He's like in the vein of what's his name? Tolle. The Power Now. Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
You know who he is?
No. I know who Wayne Dyer is, but
okay.
I don't know.
He's all about mindfulness. So he talks about a lot about the drinking the tea, the same way you just talked about smoking a cigar. About being mindful about where my tea was, and it grew on a plant, and people harvested it and processed it, and then I made hot water and steeped the tea, and now I get to sit and enjoy this wonderful cup of tea. And it gets to warm me because I'm chilled, and just really, really, really cool stuff. He does a lot of meditation stuff that is. He's dying now. Apparently, his health is pretty poor. But like a walking meditation, meditating while you're walking, and a lot of mindful type of things.
I'm a little more partial to guided meditations.
Are you?
In general. Also, also found like I might actually get a mat or something for Monday. I like actually laying down flat on my back and meditating a lot.
Yep, I'll do that.
And at least that seems to me when I really get into more of a guided meditation and stuff, and sort of getting that imagery going. And so I don't know if our good friend Joe Rogan still does that submersible tank or not.
I think he does. I think he has one.
Man.
I think he has one in the studio. There's one down here in New Albany too. I've been meaning to get
There
to.
is? Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's one in Louisville too.
I didn't know that. That'll be interesting.
There's a term that I've lost, and I need to look it back up again. But it's like a desensitization or it's something about like being like completely having no senses happen when you're floating in that tank. Mm-hmm. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say decompression chamber, but that's what you get into when you come up from scuba diving and you got the nitrogen in your blood has been released, and you're going to get the bends if you don't go into the decompression chamber. But there's some term that goes with that. But I really want to try the one out down here. There's a yoga studio downtown in New Albany here, and they've got their next door neighbors have one of those. And that reminds me I need to write that down, because that'd be a really easy thing for me to do one day in the middle of the day.
Right.
But laying down and doing that, we meditate on the mats like that, on yoga mats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think there's any, I balk quickly at anybody saying this is the right or wrong way to meditate. I will balk really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Even like when I listen, I like some guided meditation. They'll tell you to make sure you sit up straight with your spine straight. Now, I can understand what they're telling me. That's why yoga is actually what yoga, the poses of yoga were meant to strengthen your meditation posture.
Yeah. It's like when I met with Darren years ago, and he had a little meditation meeting he had going on for a while.
Down Brian.
And
Brian's house.
He's like, if you fall asleep, it's okay.
Yep.
We don't care.
I wonder what that is.
And so just that time, just setting aside time to calm, that constant movement in my head. It's me that's ultimately going to affect how I feel.
Yeah.
For the day. And that my dad still to this day has it sign on his mirror. You're looking at the only problem you will face today.
Yeah.
And I'm really doing this deal here now and having that meditation meeting, and it's definitely going forward in a positive way.
Yeah, I always think I don't know what, I guess from my engineering background and my mechanical aptitude, it's like a bearing spinning, and a bearing spinning really, really fast, and it's okay that it does that, but if you will like stop it once in a while and let it rest, it increases its lifetime by a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I kind of look at meditation, is that my bearings up here are racing most of the time.
Yeah.
And I don't really deal with like racing thoughts. I really don't. But I mean, my head's moving. I'm thinking about shit. I'm pretty mentally active dude. But when I meditate every day, I give it a rest for a minute. Now, some days are more restful than others.
Right.
But I'm giving it a chance, and I'm at least slowing the RPMs down on it for a period every day. And I like the bearing metaphor.
That's good. So, but yeah, absolutely. So regardless, the meditation thing is absolutely, I feel is absolutely compatible with pretty much every type of religion or non-religion.
It doesn't have anything to do with it.
Exactly. And so like what I was talking
about, it'd be
earlier,
like saying I got a philosophical problem with sleeping.
Good Lord.
Saying you have a problem with meditation for some philosophical reason is the exact same thing.
Yeah, and it really does. What's funny? What Nick was talking about, how that was like his parents thought it was like Satan or the devil.
Right?
Like,
yeah, people think it's evil.
God Almighty. And so, but yeah, really, we're on that. Like any new guys, like speaking my truth. Like, ultimately, there's other people who probably feel the same way I do.
Yep. Just
like there's other people who feel the same way about someone else. If someone else has a certain viewpoint, there's other people who's new in recovery who feel the same way they do. And ultimately, if somebody has a problem with what I say, then they can put my name on it for us.
Right, yeah.
It's like, so, yeah, I'm actually going to be doing the topic, open topic, after next week or the week after.
An open?
Yeah.
I can't even tell if that's a stinging bug or if that's just do you see what it is?
I don't know. It looks like a stink bug, yeah.
Stinging? I mean, like if it's a dangerous.
No.
I had somebody in here one day and there was a wasp, and I can't remember who it was, but it might have been Travis or somebody was allergic.
Stink bug.
And
and he got a little lit up, I don't remember if it's Travis or not, so it may not have been him. But whoever it was got a little excited because there was something in here that could sting him, and he was highly allergic to stings. And I understand that, right? So that's why I'm a little. That caused me to be a little bit more sensitive to like this bug that's in here right now, because I don't want that'd be no good for the podcast.
Where was I?
About open lead.
Open lead, yeah. So I pretty much decided like I want people to I want to ask people to share what is my most profound spiritual experience, and really. I want to challenge people to really sort of get out there and like speak their truth. If they think it was Jesus Christ, or if they think it was something else or whatever, or Buddha, or I want them to share that.
Yeah.
And not be afraid to share their truth.
Right, man. No doubt, man.
And because
so you don't really care what their story is. You want some people to be truthful.
Yeah. And the
and vulnerable. That's another thing about getting that stuff out, man. That takes some vulnerability to unpackage that in front of a bunch of people. We talk about some pretty deep stuff, but man, there's still some layers that are tough to get into.
Yeah, and so the new guy, and I think ultimately in the end, if there's a new guy doesn't believe in any of that stuff or think all of us are just spiritual crazy people or whatever, like the variance of what I guarantee we will hear is going to show like, hey, guess what? We're telling you the truth. We don't give a shit what you believe.
This is very well rounded.
Yeah. And
what a blessing it is to have a bunch of people to sit in a room and discuss those kind of things with, and have those varying opinions, and and that's why I try to listen to see what I can pick up.
Mm-hmm.
I really have, and Darren taught me how to listen at some level and helped me coach me into being able to actually lock into people and be open to what they're actually offering.
What a saint that man is.
Yeah. Rather than doing my old thing of wanting to be skeptical about what everybody says. And one of the things is when he says he didn't teach me this. I don't really know, but I lock in, man. I try to if I can possibly even get eye contact with somebody while they're sharing, I try to freaking look at them. And one thing it does is it blocks everybody else out. Because one of the things I want to do is look around to see if somebody else's reaction to what this person said.
Yeah.
So then I what my sponsor think about that, and I want to glance over and look at him. Well, I just resist that temptation, and I just stay looking at the guy who is talking.
Yeah.
And even if that means I had to turn around in my chair. I turn around in my chair.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, it's just a tool for me to stay to where I'm listening and stay engaged. Because I can. One of the flip side of that is the opposite of that is that I can come into a meeting and not hear a damn thing too.
Right.
I can spend that whole damn meeting up in here thinking about what I may or may not say or what I should do or all the multitude of other things I can be thinking about, and I can miss a whole meeting. So this allows me to be present and be mindful. As I'm engaging in this 1 hour, I get to sit with a bunch of people and share ideas.
Yeah, and you think, man, all them guys in there are just awesome. And sharing that stuff, it's just I don't know whatever came of it, but Dr. Brady was talking about there was some lady in Europe who was doing a study on reward center in people's brains before and after meetings. Recover. I don't know whatever came of that, but it seemed like preliminary stuff was it's going up, they get that relief.
Yeah, there's something to do with that, because that's this thing I used to say when you're early in, and it's really hard to stay sober day to day, right? In a meeting, I would have a static that raised up in me, this unease, the disease, the irritable, restless, discontent, all the other descriptions of what that feeling is would rise in me as a day went by, right? I get into a meeting, and it come down, and that would buy me enough time as that feeling crept up till tomorrow's meeting, right? And then it would come down again. But the peaks and valleys started leveling out. And it just didn't get up as high. That restless and stuff didn't get up as high, and it kept on going lower. And then before long, and the bad thing about that is then I start cutting back on my meetings because I don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need that level of care.
One of the easiest things to do is not call my sponsor. I think even though I'm trained to do it pretty well. Right now, I'm sort of calling them once or twice a week. Right now, I probably should do it more.
I'm slipping on that. I still have some communications with mine, but for the longest time of 4 years, and for the most part, and in 4 years, for the most part, I've talked to him every day. Sundays, we have an agreement, standing agreement that we don't, unless it's something emergency.
That's another. If you're talking about what I'm talking about on Sundays, I found it invaluable to have a day a week where there's no recovery, it's just sort of I get my me time.
Yep.
For me, it's like video games or something, and I love doing,
That's
and
a biblical the thing of the Sabbath, and it's the same thing of take a day of rest a week,
Yeah, and I think,
and I don't mean to say that it's Bible. What I'm saying is it's ancient spiritual teachings.
Mm-hmm. Me time.
Yeah.
Feel good.
Unwind. Spend some time.
I know
with
Chris
you,
likes playing South Park video games. He likes those games. They're pretty funny.
Yeah. It does intrigue me that he is a video game guy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The furthest thing I am from me. I just don't get into them one bit.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, I can later on when I leave here, I can go home and be a Jedi Knight in the Old Republic, 3,000 years before the movies, my video game,
Yeah. Different kind of bug. Well, man, we are approaching the 2-hour mark. So one of the things I'll try to offer is if you have any concluding things you want to say, I try to keep them. One thing is like I've said before, and I'll say it again on this. I don't know if I've said it out loud on the actual podcast or not. That's about as I'll sit here and drink something, whether it's tea or water or whatever it is, coffee. And about 2 hours in, I need a bathroom break.
Yeah.
The another thing is it gets to the level I have more of my podcasts. Our host is free. I don't pay anything to host my podcast. Mm. But there are some limitations on it, and one of them is a file size I can upload at one time. So if I get much past, I have to start. What my option is to start backing the quality down, which I don't think you can actually tell when you're streaming it because actually when it bits across I've learned it since when you, especially like Wi-Fi stuff and all that, they actually degrade the quality to a point that it's just barely what you can deal with. You know that?
Gotcha.
So that it can be compressed and sent across the airwaves. Yeah. So it's not a big deal. But anyway, I have to do those things. And so that just makes it good that we stick around that 2-hour mark. So what I was going to say to circle back to that is I stole this from another one of my favorite podcasters. His name is Steve Ranella. So I'll try to give credit where credit is due. He does one called Meat Eater. It's a hunting, fishing, outdoors type of podcast. I really dig his vibe. It's how he's another one of my podcasting heroes. And Joe Rogan is the one that told Steve Ranell to start a podcast.
Yeah.
So he says, do you have any concluders and concluding thoughts or something you want to say before we turn the microphones off?
I sort of feel like, when I came into AA, I didn't really have much hope that it would work. I thought I had problems I didn't really have. I had problems I didn't know I had. Through the pragmatic working of this program, through working the 12 steps, even independent of a belief in a higher power or whatever, I did the work, and I got better as a result. And I could form my own opinion and my own thoughts on what keeps me sober and how different things keep me sober. And those 12 steps provided a way for me to feel better in place of drugs and alcohol, way better than I ever thought I could. And anyone else who's out there who has a little worry about it, or really a lot of people, I pray that you don't be ignorant and understand and try it yourself and do the work and go through the 12 steps. I mean, I'd be in a gutter, I'd be dead, or in prison. And today I have a life way better than I could ever imagine. And I can ride the pink cloud happily today, which is one of the greatest things about you, Dan. I remember the day when you were sober a couple of years, and you said something, you shared in that meeting something like, something along the lines of like, people are warning you about a pink cloud or whatever, and you're like, I don't give a shit. That's not exactly what you said, but basically paraphrasing, you're like, fuck people who want to say I'm on this pink cloud too high. I'm riding as long as I can.
Yeah, I'm still riding it.
And I can do that today, and I can feel good. And ultimately, if I died today, I would be okay with it.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
So that's where I sit.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for being here. I'm not going to clutter up the rest of this podcast with much more because that was a powerful statement. I do have my normal ending that I'm trying to cultivate. I have for a long time. I got it when I was a treasurer for the Spiritual Underground, and I actually took it from another friend of mine named Happy, and developed it, kind of made it my own thing. So
you out there in podcast land, the Spiritual Underground podcast. Thank you all for listening today, and thank you all for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner today. Peace out.